Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and today we're going to be talking about pushes that should have been. Now, for those not familiar with the term, a push is when somebody is on the rise in their career, working their way up to the upper echelon, or as high as they can possibly go, given each individual's difference, so everyone tells a different story. But mainly when we think of a push, you think of somebody constantly winning matches, constantly looking strong. They want to be protected. They're protected in a sense so that if they lose a match, they don't look like a complete dweeb or complete jabroni. So there's 8 examples I'd like to give here of wrestlers that I've watched over the years that I've been a fan that deserved great pushes. Now, the push doesn't mean it's not a guaranteed world title run. So let me make that clear right from the very start. I'm going to make this plain. It's not a guaranteed world title victory when they're getting pushed. That just means they're becoming more popular with the fan base in general and becoming more of a household name. And sometimes that's enough because there's a lot of Hall of Famers and legends out there that were never WWE champion or whatever world title we're talking about. So here's a few examples I'd like to give, and we're going to start with the earliest one here. As far as I can think back is Wildman Mark Marrow in the fall of 1996. He was actually on the rise, coming off leaving WCW when he was Johnny B. Bad. But late 96... or the summer of 96 rather, Ahmed Johnson had to vacate the Intercontinental Championship after debuting. Farouk Assad supposedly injured him in the kidneys, but that was the kayfabe explanation. Ahmed actually did have some legit kidney problems that weren't discovered until after that beatdown by Farouk, and he had to forfeit the Intercontinental Championship, which he was holding at the time. So a tournament was held throughout August and September of 96, and then on late September of 96, Mark Marrow defeated Farouk Assad, of all people, in the tournament finals to become the new Intercontinental Champion. At that point in time, I thought the sky was the limit for him. Now, I was only 7 years old when that happened, so I had to go back and rewatch this several times over the years. It's almost 30 years ago now. So, I thought the sky was the limit for the Wild Man. But things took a turn for the worst when in October of 96, and this is 28 days after he actually won the belt, he would have to drop it to one Hunter Hearst Helmsley. And this was to start a feud, continue a feud between the two. Their feud actually started at WrestleMania 12. Hunter lost to Ultimate Warrior in, 53 seconds or whatever. And I think Sable was his valet that night. And then Wildman came to Sable's aid because I think Hunter was harassing her backstage or something or cursing her out. And so he attacked Hunter backstage and led to a feud, and then they had a few pay-per-view matches on In Your House, and I think on some free-for-alls, and then on Monday Night Raw they had a few bouts here and there, but the first serious one really took place October the 21st of 1996. That was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, on Monday Night Raw. Originally it was supposed to be Hunter Helmsley versus Mr. Perfect. On a side story going on here, Mr. Perfect was stealing all of Hunter's girls that he brought to the ring, so Hunter got jealous of Kurt Hennig there. Mr. Perfect had this complicated contract called the Lords of London or something. I'm actually not terribly familiar with it, so forgive me if I'm kind of botching the information here. But the story goes is that he was able to collect a huge sum of money without having to get physical in the ring. I don't think he could get physical in the ring because Perfect was kind of semi-retired at this point. And they teased him getting back in the ring, and then Hunter threw one of those rolling carts that they used to store all the set storage right into his knee, and so that wrote him off. So Mark Marrow decided to take Mr. Perfect's place, to make a long story short. But Hunter said, I'm not going to face Mark Marrow unless it's for the Intercontinental title. So he puts the belt on the line. Then comes the Perfect Hoax. That's what I like to call this match, because Perfect was about to hit Hunter with the chair, but then he turns over to hit Mark Marrow. What the hell? He turned heel on him. Hunter got the 3 count. We have a new Intercontinental Champion. Mark Marrow, granted, did get several rematches. In Your House, It's Time, and then on another episode of Raw, December of 96. And I think one more time in January or February 97. But after that, what really happened to the Wild Man? Now, I know he had an injury at Final Four, In Your House Final Four, in February 97, in that match against Leif Cassidy. A very serious knee injury. It might have been a torn ACL or something that required him to be out of action for a good 6 months. So he missed better part of 1997 until he came back in October and was repackaged as the boxer known as Marvelous Mark Marrow. But what kills me, though, is that this character was so hot, you could tell the fans really got into him, even if he had Sable by his side. And we all know the story here, that Sable, a lot of people jokingly say, and actually this is true, it's not really much of a joke, she usurped her husband in popularity because she really was more over than he was. While he was injured, she actually came out and advertised WWF merchandise on Raw here and there. Then eventually in 99, she got the Playboy cover shoot, which really put her on the map. But other than the whole Playboy thing and then putting the hands on her boobs, at Fully Loaded 98, the hands were painted on her boobs. Sable didn't really do much. She wasn't a great athlete in the ring, was not a great talker. Other than her assets, I guess, forgive me, lack of a better term, she didn't have a whole lot to offer. But she was a good valet for Mark Marrow, and Mark was very talented. But I think he was injury prone a lot at that time, and I don't know, he must have pissed somebody off backstage because he started to go down the card after his feud with Helmsley. He's having that match with Leif Cassidy. He's on Superstars a lot and Shotgun. So, yeah, he's really going downhill here and didn't really recover much come the fall of 97 when he was repackaged as the boxer. So, yeah, that's a shoulda, woulda, coulda situation right there. And there's a few more examples I'd like to give. So let's fast forward now to 2003 with one Sean O'Haire. You might remember Sean O'Haire from the Natural Born Thrillers in WCW, former WCW Tag Team Champion with Chuck Palumbo. I remember because they were the WCW Tag Champs at the start of the Invasion. Sean O'Haire had a Devil's Advocate gimmick going for him in the winter of 03. So this is like January, February, March 03. Devil's Advocate gimmick. Basically, he wore this long trench coat, and he had this kind of sketchy-looking aura about him. He's like that guy you don't want to meet in a dark alley that might try to, kidnap you or something. I don't know. Anyways, bad guy there. And he was somebody that questioned people's morals. He would tell them, don't pay taxes, don't go to church, don't go to work. He encouraged Brian Kendrick, who was known as Spanky at the time, to streak in front of a live audience. Well, he just had a fanny pack and a thong on, so it wasn't exactly streaking, but this is TV, so you got to be careful there. And he encouraged Dawn Marie to take her top off, just doing these dastardly things that are, I guess most people consider immoral. But I liked it because it was believable. Just the slimy snake in the grass type guy telling you what to do, what not to do in society. Don't do what society tells you to do, in other words, is what his main message was. And the best thing of all was that he had a quote to go along with it. Most wrestlers have a favorite quote, and he certainly did. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. So take that with a grain of salt. Now, he was great in those pre-tapes, but the problem was when the cameras were rolling and it was live, or even if it was taped on Tuesday and aired on Thursday, because this was SmackDown, not Raw, he just didn't cut the mustard there because he wasn't the greatest promo guy when push comes to shove. He couldn't really present himself in the manner in which management wanted him to. And so at that point in time, they decided he did not connect with the fans, so they kind of did away with the gimmick and then paired him up with the legendary Rowdy Roddy Piper during Roddy Piper's feud with Mr. America, who we all know was Hulk Hogan. Let's not bullshit ourselves. So yeah, that one really bothered me a lot because it was such a great character and it was dark and brooding. It would have been perfect for the Attitude Era, but he missed the boat on that, so we were already in the Ruthless Aggression era. I felt he could have been a great U.S. champion and worked his way up to a world title, a WWE title, which were the two belts, singles belts for the men at the time on SmackDown. If he had the right kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Right charisma about him, I guess. And, there's just a lot of factors that didn't all come together, and that's why Sean O'Haire did not click as well as he should have. He was more athletic in his style in WCW. He was a big 6'6" guy that could move around like a cruiserweight. But then they wanted to alter that to go along with the dark brooding character, and then his slow ground and pound style just didn't work. So there's a lot of different theories as to why Sean O'Haire didn't work out, but I really think it's a missed opportunity. And this is just a side note here. That theme song by Waterproof Blonde, Come On, it's called, that's really killer. If you come down in the ring with that song, oh yeah, you've got my attention. All right, moving on now. Let's see. Why don't we go to 2004 with Shelton Benjamin? This is where his push really should have happened. It was right after the 2004 WWE draft. The world's greatest tag team got split up. Shelton Benjamin got drafted to Raw while Charlie Haas remained on SmackDown. I guess they didn't think of Charlie Haas as being very charismatic or having any kind of potential as a single star, so he kind of floundered a little bit and did his own thing. But Benjamin, oh my god, you watch him. He's an amazing athletic specimen. Watch the first ever Money in the Bank from WrestleMania 21 when he runs up the inverted inclined ladder, and he runs up it like a staircase. And I think he does a clothesline like Jericho or Benoit or somebody. Amazing stuff. He's had great matches, especially that match in May of '05 against Shawn Michaels in the Gold Rush tournament. Shawn super kicks him as he's trying to do a jumping clothesline off the ropes. Oh, amazing shot right there. Excuse me, pardon me. Now, it was March of '04 leading into April of '04. Shelton Benjamin actually made a name for himself because he was feuding. He was walking backstage, and all of a sudden he runs into Triple H. Raw was Triple H's kingdom. This was during the Reign of Terror. Though Benoit was the champion, it was after WrestleMania 20. So he runs into Triple H and Randy Orton and Batista and Ric Flair, all of Evolution. And they give him a hard time. They start talking shit about him, and then they eventually beat him up. And this was the last appearance for Stone Cold Steve Austin in his sheriff role, because then he disappeared the very next week for whatever reason. I actually don't remember. So Stone Cold encourages him to make a name for himself and do something about that situation. So the main event that night is Triple H and Shelton Benjamin, March 29th, 2004. Shelton beats him 1, 2, 3 in a major upset. Woo! Oh my God! Oh, I remember marking out for that. And he did this little thing where he said, "Hunter, you were this close to beating me." So he was taunting him with this little symbol. You were this close. And so this actually happened 2 weeks in a row. So the first time he beat him, and the crowd's just going wild. They should have capitalized off that energy right there. And then now the next week they had a rematch, but this rematch was set up so it was like a boxing match. Randy Orton was the trainer with the spit bucket. Ric Flair was the special guest referee, and Dave Batista was the enforcer, or some shit like that. The very next week, I felt they squashed it because now they're making Benjamin look like shit. You want to make this guy look legit. You have him beat the top dog on Raw on his first night cleanly. He didn't cheat whatsoever. He fucking beat him clean. And then the next week, you make him look like shit. He gets this tainted victory. So now we're supposed to get behind somebody who can't even beat the same guy twice in a row. If they had booked it that he beat him twice in a row with a surprise win, it would have been more believable. But because of the route that they went, it's not believable, at least to me. And this is just one man's opinion, but I'm sure y'all could agree with that. And as great an athlete as Shelton Benjamin was, he was not the best talker. He could have benefited easily with like a Paul Heyman or a Zeb Coulter. I know Zeb Coulter wasn't in the company at the time. Paul Heyman was on SmackDown. But a manager would have helped him because he really wasn't the greatest talker. His promos are not that memorable to me. And it's just, not everybody has that skill. Not everybody has that charisma to connect with the audience. And Shelton Benjamin really lacked that. And they tried again with his U.S. title run in 2008, but I think by that point the damage was already done. So he's forever a mid-carder. And it's a shame because he really deserved better. Okay, moving on now. Let's go to 2005. Ooh, this is a hot one because this man had just got released at that time. This was Matt Hardy coming off the heels of his real-life feud with Edge. A lot of this was behind the scenes. As you know, Lita had an affair with Edge as she was dating Matt Hardy. Matt found out about it and they broke up. Of course, Matt was fuming over this situation. He was appalled. And why? Well, can you blame him? So, Matt was already released in April of 2005. Got the report on WWE.com. We wish Matt all the best in his future endeavors. Johnny Ace was in charge of talent relations, so of course he would make that comment of future endeavors. So Matt was off TV for a good 3 months. He was already injured, recovering from an injury when the affair had taken place. Come July of 2005, Matt appears on WWE television, and he's not even under contract. And he comes out and attacks Edge out of nowhere. He just jumps into the frame and just starts bludgeoning him. Just like that. And everyone's looking like, what the hell is this? The fuck is this? I remember being on the phone with my brother, who worked for WWE in the auction department at the time. we were just casually talking, and then he had to go. He's like, "What the hell?" Click. And I was like, Dave? So, anyways, he tells me that Matt Hardy appeared, and I then go back and watch it. I'm like, Jesus Christ, how was he able to even get backstage, and he doesn't even work for the company anymore? And this was real life shit happening here. This is a shoot. This was not a work. And this went on for a good 3 or 4 weeks until finally Vince McMahon comes out on TV. Vince wasn't even involved in any major storylines, I don't think, at that point in time. And he says, well, we've officially reinstated Matt Hardy, much to the fans' delight. So things were looking up. He had this match with Edge at SummerSlam where he got his head busted wide open, so they had to stop the match. Edge wins via forfeit. They have this really awesome main event on Raw, August 29th, 2005. I think it was a last man standing match, and neither man won because it got taken to the extreme. There was so much real life animosity. That's what made this feud so amazing, much like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, as I've probably alluded to in the past. And Matt does a side effect off the stage, as I recall, to Edge, and they're in there. He's in his camo gear and Edge is in his jeans, so this is like a legit street fight, of course, with under the rules of Last Man Standing. But it wasn't until Unforgiven of 2005 where Matt finally got his vindication, because he won that match. It was a steel cage match, Edge and Matt Hardy, and Matt finally won. At that point in time, they really should have moved Matt up the card. He should have been going for the Intercontinental title. He was so hot then. People were actually, so behind Matt Hardy. It kills me to this day. Even my buddy can tell me, expresses his disbelief in this because he's a big Matt Hardy fan. So this is for you, my friend. Come October of 2005, they have a ladder match for Edge's Money in the Bank briefcase. Matt loses the match, the stipulation being he's fired from Raw. That just kills all his momentum right there. A hot character, and, he's firing on all cylinders in everything he does, and then you move him to another show. Obviously, they didn't want Edge and Matt Hardy, who still had some animosity somewhat, to be together on the same show, so it was best that he went elsewhere. There could have been another way of doing it. Well, no, there's no better way to do this. They should have just kept it on Raw, for God's sakes. What the hell am I saying? Really, they should have, and then have him win the IC title, and then we'll see what could have happened. Maybe he could have gotten a world title victory. It wasn't as over as his brother was. Jeff Hardy was just over tenfold because of how crazy he can be. Jeff's the crazier one of the two, and Matt is sort of the calm in the middle of the storm. Okay, moving on now. We're going to 2007. I got 2 examples here. We'll start with Mr. Kennedy, Ken Kennedy. I picked 2007 for him because this was right after WrestleMania 23. He just won Money in the Bank. He was only the 3rd person to win that match, and they were doing it annually at WrestleMania before it became its own pay-per-view like it is today, or PLE in 2025. So Mr. Kennedy won Money in the Bank, and the very next month he defends it against Edge. Edge is still on Raw, and the briefcase is up for grabs, and Kennedy loses because he gets injured. This man has a history of injuries. He's one of those injury-prone people that eventually they lost faith in. So Edge takes Money in the Bank. He wins Money in the Bank from Kennedy, and then moves over to SmackDown, cashes in on a fallen Undertaker, and the rest is history. Kennedy tried and tried and tried. They gave him a short run with the U.S. belt when he was on SmackDown. Then he got drafted to Raw. Should have gotten an Intercontinental title win. Could have moved up the ranks. And I think they were also going to put him in the feud in the Mr. McMahon's illegitimate son storyline, but I think he was one of 10 people who got suspended for violating the wellness policy, and they were very strict on they still are strict on the wellness policy, but more so in that day and age, coming off the heels of Eddie's death and Benoit's death, which were both drug related. So Kennedy this is kind of his fault here because, he violated the wellness policy. It's a violation, so he's suspended for 30 days. So, because his name's Kennedy, and Vince McMahon's middle name is Kennedy, there could have been a connection right there. That would have worked. But instead, they go the Hornswoggle route. Why the hell did they ever choose Hornswoggle? But that's a different topic for another day. And then Kennedy tried to come back, and then he got injured again, and got drafted to SmackDown, then drafted to Raw. And these were mostly supplemental draft picks, so this is the ones you'd see on .com after the draft every year. And the only thing he did during that time being injured was star in he didn't star. He was a B-level actor in a movie called Behind Enemy Lines Columbia, where he was advertised as the main character. He's on the cover of the DVD case, and this is straight to DVD. It never aired in theaters, I don't think. And he's only in what, like 2 or 3 scenes from what I heard. I never saw Behind Enemy Lines Colombia, but it's pathetic. You don't advertise a guy who's not the main character just to, buy more, just to enhance your DVD sales. So it was pretty pathetic. And then he got fired. He got released in May of 2009 after botching a move in the ring or aggravating an injury to Randy Orton. And I think Orton had a lot of stroke in getting him released. So there's a lot of animosity between the two. Then he went to TNA and became Mr. Anderson. His real name's Ken Anderson. So that sucks for Ken Kennedy right there. Mr. Kennedy. I said I had another one for 2007. This is going to the ECW brand. Elijah Burke. Oh, I loved Elijah Burke. He was the leader of the New Breed, and he really got to showcase his talents at WrestleMania 23 in the New Breed with Elijah Burke, Matt Stryker, Kevin Thorne, Marcus Corvon. Unfortunately, they lost, but they did take on the ECW originals. Rob Van Dam, the late, great Sabu, just passed recently. May he rest in peace. The Sandman, and Tommy Dreamer. But they got their revenge. They got their redemption the following Tuesday, ECW on Sci-Fi in an Extreme Rules 8-man tag. Elijah had this move I love called the Elijah Express. Guy would be in the corner with his back just lying here, and Elijah would ram it, take down his knee pads, pretend he was on a train, and ram his knees right into the back of his opponent. Oh, just like that. What a sick move that was. Wasn't meant to be as sick as it presented itself. So, he was actually Chris Benoit's last opponent ever, Elijah Burke was. And it surprises me that to this day, that he was never inserted into the ECW title match at Vengeance Night of Champions, where Benoit was supposed to win. And we'll get into the whole Benoit video. Well, not a video, I haven't even planned it yet, but maybe I'll do a Benoit video detailing some of that stuff another time. But without getting into detail on that, too much detail, he was not Elijah Burke, because he was kind of the runner-up here. He lost to the number one contender. Should have rightfully faced CM Punk that night for the vacant ECW title. Instead, it goes to Johnny Nitro randomly, who later became John Morrison. So, Burke actually tried to challenge. He challenged CM Punk at Unforgiven of 2007. They had a really good match, but didn't do any favors for Burke. And then he kind of faded into obscurity after. He's in random tag matches with like Nunzio and Jesse and Festus, guys like that. Deuce and Domino. So they could have at least given him a run as a world title run on a third tier brand. This is ECW on Sci-Fi. And then by like May or June of 2008, he's released. And then he has better success in TNA as Pope D'Angelo Dinero. But he was a great talker. He was certainly better than the protege that he was managing at first. That was Sylvester Terkay, an MMA fighter from California, who really didn't have a whole lot to show. He wasn't, a Brock Lesnar or Randy Couture, but he presented himself like he was from the UFC. And Sylvester had no charisma and wasn't that great in the ring, so they dropped him. But they went with Elijah took the ball and ran with it as much as he could on ECW, and I think he could have gotten promoted. Give him an ECW world title victory. He's extreme. Come on, let's face it. And you could have put him either on Raw or SmackDown during one of the drafts and have him win a mid-card title. Now again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier. Not everyone has to be a world champion, WWE champion, whatever. But they could at least have something, a little bit more to add to their resume. Gold or whatever, bigger storylines. But it just didn't play out that way, sadly. All right, I think I got a couple more examples here as I look at my list. Let's go to 2011. Christian. Now, he did get 2 world title wins that year, but they were the second one was tainted. He had this big win over Alberto Del Rio for the vacant world heavyweight title. Christian was never supposed to win it. That was Edge had to retire due to the spinal stenosis he was suffering at the time. A forced retirement means vacating the world heavyweight championship. So Christian was next in line, and he, at that point in time, he'd worked so hard and really deserved it. So I was all for him winning it. So I got behind Christian. And he won the match against Del Rio in dramatic fashion. It was a ladder match at Extreme Rules 2011 in Tampa. 2 nights later, SmackDown comes to Orlando, and they were in Miami for Raw. Having lived in Florida for 5 years, I probably could have gone to the Miami show, but I don't think I was even there. I might have been back up north visiting family. So, after Raw in Miami, we go to SmackDown in Orlando. Randy Orton immediately challenges Christian, and Christian, as a babyface champion, isn't going to back down from a fight. So what happens is he defends the title, and then he loses after an RKO to Randy Orton. 1, 2, 3. What the fuck was that? 2-day world champion. My buddy and I still talk about this 14 years later. When he worked at Hess, I walked inside and he said to me, "Hey Harry, Christian, 2-day world champ, all the way." And I said back to him, "All the way." We still say bullshit about that back and forth as of press time. So now Christian is on the hunt now for the belt, like he was about a week prior. And he has all these great matches on pay-per-view against Randy Orton. He loses it over the limit, 2011. Loses at Capital Punishment, 2011. Come Money in the Bank, 2011. He wins in the most tainted possible way via disqualification. I think the stipulation was that if Orton got disqualified, he would lose the match and the belt. So, I think, something like that happened. I haven't watched the match in so long, so forgive me. But I think, Orton got disqualified. Christian won the world title. And this was the same night that of John Cena, CM Punk, and their WWE Championship match, which was a much bigger storyline and match, to be honest. But so that's why it's kind of hard to remember the undercard of that evening because of the biggest main event in history, in my view. So now Christian's a world champion come July of 2011. It's a very tainted run. It only lasts like 28 days. It was a tainted victory and a kind of a, I want to say almost a pity run because now it's like they're giving him the belt because they felt bad the first one didn't work out. So then he still feuds with Orton and their feud culminates, I believe, at SummerSlam in that Extreme Rules match they had, a hardcore match, no holds barred, whatever the fuck you want to call it. It's all the same shit. So Orton wins it back and then, I have to correct myself because then they had a steel cage match on a special Tuesday edition of SmackDown. I forget why it was why it was aired on a Tuesday. It was a live SmackDown. Orton wins the cage match, and then Christian kind of fades into obscurity, feuding with Sheamus until he injures himself yet again. He was another one like Kennedy, was very injury prone. And then he became this chicken shit heel that complained about not being champion. So it's all because of Vince McMahon didn't have any faith in Christian. He thought he looked too much like a rat. He hated his face. He always wanted to cover it with a blue dot. He always talked about, or that's what Bruce Pritchard talks about on his podcast when it comes to Vince McMahon's opinion on Christian Cage. So that's too bad, because he was just as great, if not better, than his best friend Edge. And I'm a big Edge head, so it's a lot coming from me. The last example is Zack Ryder, whose gear I'm wearing here. Got this shirt back in late 2011 when it came out, and on the back, see if you can see it. Are you serious, bro? And of course the broski headband. Whoa, whoa, whoa! You know it! Zack was getting immensely popular come 2011 with his YouTube show, Z, True Long Island Story. And I auditioned to be the broski of the week, but they never accepted my submission. It was just a YouTube video. But there were hundreds and thousands of people that were probably better suited for that than me. So I ended up buying all this gear. And I've had this for 14, 15 years now. So Zack, he starts to get, we start to hear "We Want Ryder" chants on Raw, SmackDown, pay-per-views. And he's not even on the freaking show. He's only on Superstars. And he was on the Raw brand, and they were still having the brand split at the time, and it was coming to an end. Everywhere you went, "We want Ryder. We want Ryder." And even when The Rock returned to WWE in 2011, he had his first match back at Survivor Series. And this was the post-show where he did a promo, and this is when they went off the air. You could still hear Ryder chants then. And they're cheering for a lower card guy with one of the greatest main eventers of all time is in the ring cutting a promo. Rock puts him over, says, "Zack Ryder, I kind of like him too." Just very quickly, kind of nonchalantly. So, with enough fan support, Zack decides to go after the United States Championship, and the current holder at the time was Dolph Ziggler. He loses the match to Ziggler at Vengeance 2011, become TLC 2011. It's the biggest night in the career of one Zack Ryder up to that point, because he wins, and he beats Dolph Ziggler with a Rough Rider and a 1-2-3. And I remember that image of him holding the U.S. belt, and he's going, "Woo, woo, woo, you know it," with the fans, and his dad's right there. And Zack's from Long Island, and the show was live in Baltimore. So you can imagine when they've gone to Long Island. I was there at Fatal 4-Way with another friend, and I remember watching the dark match. It was Zack Ryder and MVP, and fans were going wild for Ryder then, but though the popularity hadn't taken off until a year later. So Zach's finally the U.S. champion. They did something right come late 2011. And we go into the holidays and the new year, rest assured that, oh, things are going to look great for Zach. Boy, were we ever wrong. Kane returns coincidentally around this time. Just happens to be both things happening at the same time. And he goes right after Zack Ryder. Zack Ryder was friends with John Cena. John Cena actually begged John Laurinaitis to give Zack that U.S. title match. So Zack Ryder somehow gets intertwined in this feud, and he gets chokeslammed through the ring, off a loading dock, off the stage. He's battered and bruised, his ribs taped up. And then he goes on to lose his belt to Jack Swagger on an episode of Raw when Zack Ryder himself is not 100% to compete, and this is in kayfabe. So he never got his rematch for the U.S. title, never even got it back. He's getting bludgeoned by Kane. The worst offense of all is when he's in a wheelchair and Kane just wheels him right off the ramp. There's not even any protective padding, or at least what I could see. And this is February of 2012. Then WrestleMania comes. He's on Team Teddy. This is Team Teddy versus Team Johnny. Then he gets kicked in the balls by Eve about right before the match is over. Miz picks up the win for Team Johnny. So now he looks like a complete dweeb in front of 78,000 fans at Sun Life Stadium. I was one of them. And the rest of his teammates just watch as Eve walks off and turns heel on him. And then he's basically just back to Superstars where he was a year ago. He really came full circle. Then he had that one little moment at WrestleMania 32 in 2016 when he won the Intercontinental Championship in that 7-man ladder match. But that sure as hell didn't last long, even shorter than the U.S. title run, because that was only a 24-hour reign with the belt. So very sucky for Zack Ryder. I'm happy what he's doing now as under his real name, Matt Cardona, as the Indie God, and taking off after Indiana Jones, I guess, with the hat and jacket and everything. Not a full-fledged Indiana Jones gimmick character, but, allusions. He's allusions to it, if you will. So, yeah, I've always supported Zack, and it was just stupid that he never was treated on the same level as other upper mid-carders at the time, like Dolph Ziggler. Even Santino Marella had better booking than Zack Ryder. Guys like The Miz, who else was Mark Henry? I could name a bunch. Kofi Kingston. They were all treated better than Zack Ryder, so damn shame. Anyways, I've covered a lot here, and let me know what you think in the comments, and maybe there's some other examples I may have missed, and I'd love to hear it if you have any. So this has been another great edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and until next time, everybody, bye-bye.